Hello, my wonderful students. We're on our last lesson in this chapter. We're on 9.13. We're going to do some more work on it tomorrow on Wednesday, some review, but today we're on 9.13. That is page number 689. Page number 689, and we're on subtracting with renaming. Subtracting with renaming. And if you see this sea cucumber, sea cucumbers don't look like cucumbers with snorkeling equipment, then you know you're on the right page. So we're going to read this. Sometimes the fraction in the first mixed number is less than the fraction in the second mixed number. In this case, we need to rename the first fraction. So we're going to, this is a little tiny bit tricky, but I want you to remember this. When you were first learning how to subtract, way back in like first grade, you would do like 9 minus 6, and you'd be like, ooh, I got it. And so you'd know to take 6 away, and you'd get 3. But then you had to learn how to do 11 minus 6. And you actually had to borrow, right? You had to borrow from this one, and you had to learn this process. That becomes a 0, and this becomes an 11 here. You had to learn that process, and before you knew that, this was really hard. That was really hard for you to do, this renaming, regrouping of subtraction. So we're going to do something just as similar today. We're going to be borrowing from a whole number to give to the fraction. And so it might be a little bit tricky today, but I want you to know that just like this was once really tricky, you can get this. And so let's take a look at the example, and we'll try and figure this out. It says, a black sea cucumber has an average length of 2 feet. A spotted sea cucumber has an average length of 1 1/3 feet. How much longer, that's her subtraction, is the average black sea cucumber than the average spotted sea cucumber? So how much longer subtraction? So we're going to do 2 minus 1 1/3. So if we estimate that 2 minus 1, our answer should be about 1. About 1. Now notice it says you cannot subtract 1/3 from 0/3. So if we stacked it up, 2 minus 1 1/3, you'll notice there's nothing here. There's 0/3, right? You don't have any fractions. You just have a whole number 2. You don't have any fractions of the whole. So you can't take 1 away from 0. Just like up here, I couldn't take 6 away from 1. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to rename this 2 as 1 3/3 to give it more thirds. So what we can do is we can borrow and make this 1, and we're taking 1 from it, and remember 1 in thirds is 3/3. Anything is always, if you have a whole, like 4/4, 5/5, whatever the denominator is, 16/16, 222 222, that's 1. They're all one whole because they're all full. 4 pieces of pie and you have all 4 of them. You have the whole pie. 5 pieces of pie and you have all 5 of them. It's the whole pie. So we're going to borrow and turn that into 1, and then we're going to give 3/3 over to this. So we're going to add 3/3 to this fraction. That's the 1 that we borrowed from here. That's our 1 that we borrowed. So we're going to add this together. What's 0/3 plus 3/3? Well, my denominators are the same, so I've got 3/3. Now I can subtract 3/3 minus 1/3. Well, the denominators are the same. I just subtract. 3 minus 1 is 2. I can rewrite the denominator. Now I go back to my whole numbers, and instead of subtracting from 2, I subtract 1 minus 1. It's nothing. It's 0 2/3, or just 2/3. So 2/3 is my answer here. And is 2/3 about 1? Well, let's see. Here would be 2/3, and here's 1. So yeah, it's close for our estimate. Okay, let's do some more examples. Let's do some more examples so we can get some practice doing this. So let's turn the page and go to example number 2. Okay, example number 2 says find 4 1/4 minus, oh, my book is stuck here, you guys. Okay, find 4 1/4 minus 2 5/8. So remember, I always like you to stack it. So I'm going to write 4 1/4 minus 2 5/8. So our first step is to always say, is to work with the fractions. Well, they're not a common denominator, so I have to get a common denominator first. So 4 and 8, ooh, 4 can go into 8, so I get a freebie here on the 5/8. And I'm going to change this denominator to 8. 4 times what gives me 8? 4 times 2. I do the same thing to the top that I did to the bottom. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so if it helps you, you can remember that these are now gone. We've got equivalent fractions there. Let me move my camera up a little so you can see that better. There you go. If it helps you, you can mark those off. So now it's 4 2/8 minus 2 5/8. But I can't take 5 away from 2. I can't take 5 away from 2, right? 5 is bigger than 2. So I'm going to borrow, just like I would borrow in regular subtraction. So I'm going to borrow one whole from this. So this becomes a 3. Now, you could put the 1 whole there as a 1, but that's not, it's going to trip you up still. Remember, we're going to add that 1 whole to this fraction, but we're going to add it in whatever fractional form it is. So how many eighths is 1 whole? 8 eighths. So now we get to add those together. 2 eighths plus 8 eighths. Well, my denominators are the same. 8 plus 2 is 10. Now, you guys, I have 10 eighths minus 5 eighths. My denominators are the same. I can just subtract. 10 minus 5 is 5. And then I can just go back to my whole numbers and do any subtractions left. 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 5/8. So you can write that all the way down here in your answer. 1 5/8. We're going to get lots of practice doing this, so if you're still confused, don't stress. If you're still confused, don't stress. We're going to get lots of practice. Let's go to the guided practice. Speaking of practice, we've just got one problem here. It says estimate, then subtract, and write each difference in simplest form. So we've got about 5 minus about 4, 3 or 4. So 5 minus 4 equals 1. 5 minus 3 equals 2. So my answer is going to be around 1 or 2. So let's take a look. We've got 5 2/5 and 3 4/5. So they're already both in fifths. So I can try to subtract, but I've got 2 minus 4. I can't do that. So I'm going to borrow. This is going to become a 4. So you write that there, your whole number, 4. And then that 1, remember we've got 2/5, and we're going to add 1 whole. We've just borrowed it from the 5, but we want it in fifths. How many fifths is a whole? 5 fifths. So 5 fifths plus 2 fifths, so we've got 7 fifths. That's a fraction greater than 1, but it's okay. We need it to subtract. So now my denominators are the same. I've got enough. 7 minus 4 is 3. Rewrite the denominator, and then I subtract 4 minus 3 is 1. Is my answer about 1 or 2? Yes. Okay, let's go over to the independent practice page. Remember, if you need more time, you can always pause the video and come back. Okay, let's just take a look at this. 4 3/8, number 2. 4 3/8 minus 1 5/8. So my denominators are the same. Awesome. I don't have to work on a least common denominator. But I cannot take 3 minus 5. I can't take 5 away from 3, so I'm going to have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow 1 whole from this one, and that becomes a 3. Now if I add that 1 whole to that to borrow, you don't have to draw the 1 if you don't want to, but it's helpful. We've got it, we want to keep it in eighths because that's what my denominator is. How many eighths is 1 whole? 8 eighths is 1 whole. That is so tiny. 8 eighths is 1 whole. 3 eighths plus 8 eighths, or 3 plus 8 is 11 eighths. Now I can subtract 11 minus 5. What's 11 minus 5? 11 minus 5 is 6. I rewrite my denominator. Subtract the whole numbers. 3 minus 1 is 2. It's almost done, you guys, but I do have a step where I can simplify here because these are both even numbers, so I know I can take out a 2. So divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So this is 2 3/4. 2 3/4. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. We have 3 1/6 minus 3 or minus 1 1/3. First step, I've got to get common denominators. So I've got 6 and 3. Ooh, 3 can go into 6, so I can go up to 6. So let's change this denominator to 6. 3 times what gives me 6? 3 times 2. That's an ugly 2. Do the same thing to the top that I did to the bottom. 1 times 2 is 2. But now I've got this 2/6 from 1/6. I can't take 2 away from 1. That 2 is too big, so I have to borrow. This 3 becomes a 2. And I borrowed 1 whole from that 3. So I'm going to change that into fractional form. And here I'm in sixths. So my 1 whole is 6/6 that I am adding to that. So 6/6 plus 1/6. 1 plus 6 is 7. I keep the denominator sixths. Now, if you want to rewrite it, you can. Your 2/6 over here. That's hard to say, 2/6. So I've got the common denominator. I can subtract 7 minus 2 equals 5. Rewrite my denominator. Go back and check your whole numbers. Is there anything left? 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 5/6. Okay, so it's just one additional step if we have to borrow. One additional step from what we've been doing. Let's do number 4. 5 1/4 minus 4 1/2. Always check denominators first. I've got 1/4 and 1/2. That doesn't work. I've got to get a common denominator. Now, remember, I like to check, can the lowest number go into the biggest one? It can. So let's go with the biggest denominator there. 1/4, we can just rewrite that one. And we're going to change this one to a 1/4. 2 times what gives you 4? 2 times 2. Do the same thing to the top that you did to the bottom. 1 times 2 is 2. But now you see I've got this 2. I can't take 2 away from 1. And I can cross this off if that helps you. I can't take 2 halves or 2/4 away from 1/4. I've got 1/4 to start with. Where's my marker? I've got 1/4 to start with, and I cannot take 2/4 away from it, right? I can't, there's not 2 to take away. But I do have 5 holes, right? So I've got this one is completely filled in. And I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 of them. And we can do this, right? I've got 5 full ones. So I'm going to borrow from this 5, and that's going to turn into a 4. So basically, I've got 4 now left, and I'm putting this into the fraction pile. So how many fourths is 1 whole? 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I have 1 more, 5/4. So it's the same as adding a 4/4 or 1 whole to that top. 1/4 plus 4/4 is 5/4. Now I can do 5/4 minus 2/4. 5 minus 2 is 3. I add or subtract the numerator. I keep the denominator. Go back to my whole numbers. Do I have any left? 4 minus 4? No, that's a 0. So my answer is just 3/4. We're going to do a couple more of these. We're going to do a couple more. Let's just do these 5, 6, and 7. Actually, let's skip number 5. And I want to start here with number 6 because this one's a little bit tricky. 4 minus 1 1/8. 4 minus 1 1/8. So there's currently 0 eighths. You can write that if you want. There's 0 eighths. 4 and 0 eighths. And so I can't subtract a 1 from a 0, right? I can't take 1 away from nothing. So I have to borrow. So this becomes a 3. And remember, I'm borrowing one whole, but I'm going to keep it in the fractional form. So instead of writing plus 1, I'm going to write plus 8 eighths. Use the denominator you already have. 0 plus 8 is 8. 8 eighths. So now I have 8 eighths minus 1 eighth. That I can do. My denominator is the same. I can take 1 away from 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. Rewrite your denominator for 8. Go back to your whole number. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 and 7 eighths. And I know that that is simplified because the numbers are 1 away from each other. 7 eighths. Okay, last one, you guys. It's number 7. 12 minus 5 and 1/6. I would love for you to try to do that one on your own. So pause the video right here. Try to do that one on your own and come back and check your work. If you get stuck, you can come back and watch the video, but try to do that one on your own. Remember, hint, currently you have 12 whole numbers, so you actually have 0 sixths. 12 and 0 sixths. So go ahead and try that one. Okay, because you have 12 and 0 sixths, you can't take 1 away from 0, so you have to borrow. So this 2 becomes a 1, or your 12 becomes an 11. You can do it either way. This is 11 now. And that 1 whole we borrowed, I'm going to put it in its fractional form, and I'm going to keep the denominator I already have, which is 6. So 6 sixths. 0 plus 6 is 6. I add the numerators, keep the denominator. So now I have 6 sixths minus 1 sixth. I can do that. 6 minus 1 is 5. I subtract the numerator, keep the denominator of 6, and now I go back to my whole numbers. Are there anything left? 11 minus 5 is 6. Your answer that you should have got for that one is 6 and 5 sixths. I know that's simplified because they're one number apart. Great job, you guys. Don't stress if this is feeling overwhelming to you. Just like I said at the beginning, when you first learned to borrow with subtraction, it was really confusing and you had a hard time with it, but you will get this just like you got that.